You to think about something with me for a second. Right now, as you're watching this, there is a narrow strip of water, about 21 miles wide at its tightest point, that carries roughly 20% of the world's oil supply, the Strait of Hormuz. Most folks couldn't find it on a map 3 weeks ago. Today, it's the most dangerous waterway on earth. And the President of the United States is on social media asking China to send warships to help us open it. Let that settle in for a moment. This is one of those moments that looks like it's about one thing: a shipping lane, a military standoff, oil prices. But it's really about something else entirely. It's about how America makes its most serious decisions. It's about whether we still believe that the institutions we built, the ones that are supposed to govern how this country goes to war and how it builds alliances, whether those institutions still mean anything at all. See, I've been watching this unfold for 15 days now, since February 28th, when this war began. And what I keep coming back to isn't just what's happening in the Persian Gulf. It's the distance, the enormous distance between what we're being told and what's actually true on the ground. The president says we've destroyed 100% of Iran's military capability, and yet the strait is still closed. Oil is up 25%. 16 ships have been attacked. And now we're publicly asking countries we didn't consult before the first bomb dropped to come bail us out. There's a word for that gap between rhetoric and reality. And in my experience, when that gap gets wide enough, people get hurt. And we'll come back to that in a moment. Because the details of what was posted on Truth Social this morning tell you everything you need to know about where we really stand. But first, you have to understand how we got here. And that story starts not with a bomb, but with a negotiation that almost worked. Let me tell you something about diplomacy. It's not something you do after you've already lit the match. 2 days, that's all it was. On February 26th, the United States and Iran were sitting across from each other in Geneva, with Oman mediating, trying to hammer out a nuclear agreement. It didn't work. The talks ended without a breakthrough. But they ended. They didn't collapse. There's a difference. When talks end, you still have a thread. When bombs fall, you cut it. 48 hours later, on February 28th, the United States and Israel launched a joint surprise strike campaign across Iran. Nearly 900 strikes in the first 12 hours alone. Supreme Leader Khamenei was killed. Military sites, nuclear facilities, command structures hit across the board. And here's the part that still gets me. The president announced it on Truth Social, not from the Oval Office, not in an address to the nation, not after briefing congressional leadership, on a social media platform. Now, in my experience, the planning you do before the crisis determines whether you survive the crisis. When I ordered strikes, whether it was Iraq in '98 or the decisions we made in Bosnia and Kosovo, there was a process. You bring in your national security team. You consult with allies. You go to Congress, even when the law doesn't force you to, because you understand that a democracy fights differently than a dictatorship. That's not weakness, that's the whole point. What happened instead was this. Iran retaliated with missiles and drones against Israel and American bases. The Strait of Hormuz, the jugular vein in the global oil economy, effectively shut down. 16 ships attacked in 2 weeks, and by day 15, with gas prices climbing and markets rattling, the president went back to Truth Social to ask China, France, Japan, South Korea, and Britain to send their navies to fix the problem he hadn't planned for. That sequence matters because it tells you this wasn't a strategy. It was a reaction dressed up as one. And the people paying the price aren't sitting in situation rooms. They're standing at gas pumps and cooking stoves and shipping docks all over the world. Now look, I've read a lot of presidential statements in my life. I've written a fair number of them. And this one tells you more about what's gone wrong than what's going right.
You owe more than $10,000 in Canada on things like...
On the morning of March 14th, the president posted on Truth Social that many countries would be sending warships in conjunction with the United States to keep the strait open and safe. He named China, France, Japan, South Korea, the United Kingdom. He said he hoped they'd come. Hoped. Not confirmed, not announced after diplomatic agreement, hoped. And in the very same post, and I want you to hold these two sentences together, he claimed that 100% of Iran's military capability had been destroyed. Then, one line later, he admitted they could still send a drone or two, drop a mine, or deliver a close-range missile along the waterway. Now, if you've destroyed everything, there shouldn't be anything left to worry about. But there is. And that contradiction isn't a small thing. That's the crack in the whole foundation. Here's what made it worse. The IRGC Navy chief responded publicly. Americans falsely claimed the destruction of Iran's navy. Then they falsely claimed escorting oil tankers. Now they're even asking others for backup forces. That's your adversary narrating your credibility problem back to you in real time. And this is where things start to get complicated. While the president was posting, India quietly negotiated bilateral passage through the strait directly with Tehran. 2 Indian tankers crossed safely that same morning. Turkey did the same thing earlier in the week. 14 more Turkish vessels waiting for clearance. These countries didn't wait for an American-led coalition. They picked up the phone and talked to Iran. When your adversary is cutting separate deals with other countries while you're on social media asking for help, you've lost something you can't bomb your way back to. And that something has a name. It's called diplomatic leverage. Once it's gone, the only people who can give it back to you are the ones you've already alienated. We've got to remember, real leadership isn't about how loud you can be. It's about how honest you're willing to be. When I ordered strikes on Iraq in 1998, Operation Desert Fox, I understood something that never left me. You can't ask people to sacrifice if you haven't first asked them to understand. I went to the American people. I explained the intelligence. I worked with allies beforehand, not afterward. And even then, even with all that preparation, I knew the weight of it. Because once you give that order, real people are in harm's way, and they don't get to come back and argue with your decision. What we're witnessing now is something fundamentally different. This administration launched a war for regime change. Let's call it what it is, without congressional authorization. The House voted on a war powers resolution on March 5th. It failed, but narrowly. That narrowness should tell you something. Members of the president's own party had doubts. And instead of treating those doubts seriously, the administration pressed forward as if the debate itself were an inconvenience. Then there's the defense secretary. Pete Hegseth was asked about the Strait closure, the single greatest economic vulnerability created by this war. And his answer was, "We have been dealing with it and don't need to worry about it." Just 5 days earlier, Energy Secretary Chris Wright told CNBC the United States wasn't even ready to escort tankers through the strait itself.